All right, we are on episode number 48 of No Pun Intended, and it really seems like the first 47 were all prep for today because we have the original chess podcast goat, Ben Johnson, joining us today. Thank you for joining us, Ben.
Hey, good to see you guys.
Yeah, I have been a long time listener of the Perpetual Chess Podcast, and so it's like we're meeting a celebrity here on our own podcast. I never thought we would see the day, but yeah, thanks for coming to join us today.
Yeah, you got to pump the brakes a little there, but as you know, I'm fans of your work too, Matt and Jesse. So happy to come on.
Awesome. So, what do you think about the World Chess Championship? We are currently in we just finished round seven this morning, and so if you don't want spoilers up to round seven, then skip ahead. But we had probably the highest quality game of the match today. Magnus said this was his favorite, and we have a draw, and we are tied after 7 rounds. So, Ben, what are your thoughts in the first? We are officially at the halfway point, I guess. So, what are your thoughts in the first half?
I love it. I mean, it's just a reminder. You tend to forget, or at least I do. I get excited for the match and I want to watch it, but it evokes feelings in me that no other chess event really evokes in me. It's like, I'm wearing a Phillies hat. I'm a big Phillies fan, especially now because my son is like, he's 11. He's like the perfect age where everything just feels so important. When you watch like a tense moment in a sporting event, and chess, for all of its beauty, it's rare that I get that feeling. But when you're watching someone like Gukesh's flag hang in the balance, and Ding playing this ferocious defense with so much money and so much legacy on the line, I just love it. And to me, there's nothing else in chess like it. So, and obviously there's been a lot of discussion, including with Matt on Perpetual Chess going in. Neither of us really expected the match to be this close at this point. I kind of still didn't expect it to be this close even coming into today. Every time Gukesh has white, I'm like, all right, today he's going to win, and now I'm starting to doubt that because I'm probably not super qualified to handicap like 2,700 players, but to me, it's like flashes of the old Ding. So I'm loving it.
Yeah, I completely agree. It seems like we got a very strong and very sharp Ding Liren, which I think that was like the existential worry for everyone. Like, are we going to get like this 2650 Ding and he's just going to kind of get crushed? It's not going to be interesting. But it really seems like he's at his best, and I am so happy for that. But you're right. For me, like the big moments is like in chess, it's like these World Chess Championship games, like one move and it's over. Like the whole championship could be gone in one move. I get that in the same way with the candidates tournament because it's
Yeah.
like, and then like Speed Chess Championship a little bit because I mean that's just like the online tournament.
Yeah,
But
I
the other
enjoy that, but
one,
that doesn't do it. That's not the same for me.
yeah,
I just don't
yeah,
care that much. Yeah.
yeah. And then the other one for me is title fights in the UFC. Like anything can happen at any time.
Yeah, I'm not a UFC guy, but like that feeling, it is more common in sport. But yeah, and it's like in sport, often why you care. It's kind of irrational to be a sports fan, but generally, if you're watching, like you've already come to grips with that. But like in chess, with something like Gukesh, it's like my heart rate is racing when he's
Yeah.
down to 10 seconds, and I'm like, I don't even know for sure who I want to win. Like, why am I
Yeah.
nervous watching this?
Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, so Matt went on Perpetual Chess Podcast. We'll link that in the description, and he gave Gakesh a huge advantage before any move was played. So Matt, talk us through the stats after halfway through.
Yeah, I thought it was around 81% chance for Gukesh to win. I did end up doing one of those articles for chess.com, but I think 81% was what was in there. And it's been a very interesting first half of the match. I think after game one, everyone was just shocked. How could Ding possibly win game one with the French defense?
With
And I would
black, yeah.
with black, yeah. And I was running some stats, Ben. In the first 6 games, we had 2 decisive results and 4 draws. In all 4 draws, Ding had the larger advantage. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean that sort of squares with what I've just felt anecdotally in watching the game. It's not Gukesh is not getting unlucky.
And then also it's interesting that in the games that Ding has been white, Gukesh has had 0 advantage at all in those 3 games. So not once has the eval dipped below 0.
Well, what about today? Was this?
Well, today Gukesh was white in the games where Ding was white. Yeah, so Ding's playing this ultra solid, setup with white, not going for it much. Like he played the London, he played that Hikaru Nakamura-esque knight f3, e3, b3.
With Bishop A3 even. Yeah.
Yeah, with Bishop
Yeah.
A3. Yeah, so he's really not taking any risks, whereas Gukesh seems to be the one pressing. He's taking a lot more risks. He's avoiding queen trades. So I was wondering, do you think, Ben, the best strategy for Gukesh is to keep playing a bit riskier chess, just knowing that higher variance should favor him if he's the stronger player, getting some more decisive games?
I think macro, what he's doing, I still think it favors him. Like I had a bonus podcast also after round 6 where I was talking with I am Michael Rahal, and I mean, if Ding is not going to press when he gets an edge, like that, sooner or later that's going to bite you. I mean, Gukesh maybe has shown a mild propensity to overpress, but I don't think Gukesh needs to make any sort of big adjustments. Again, to evoke sports, sometimes they say like the adjustment we need to make is to play better, and Gukesh missed a couple opportunities today. I mean, I'm mainly deferring to people like Magnus and Levy's recap when I say like that they say that these were sort of spottable but not trivial opportunities for him. But it just seems like he has this capability of just getting you in his crosshairs and never letting you out, and that hasn't happened yet. But if Ding is gonna just acquiesce every time he has an advantage with white and not play pressing lines to begin with, I still feel like that's poor match strategy. But as Magnus and Levy were saying on today's recap on Take, I mean, the tension elevates move by move, game by game. So, Gukesh obviously, by all indications, is like the coolest customer on earth, but like no one is immune. So, whereas I've been worried about sort of a Ding meltdown, like a lot of people from the beginning, the longer it goes and the closer it is, I feel like the odds of a meltdown sort of also kind of equalize. So I still think Gukesh, I still think it's dangerous for Ding not to press his edges, but also he played his best game today. So I mean, especially from when he was worse on. So maybe he found something. It'll be fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's the memes out there, the Ding chillin' memes.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
they're
it
great.
does seem like the further the match goes on, the more comfortable he gets.
Yeah.
And the psychology of the match for Gukesh has to be, let's try to rattle Ding a little bit. Like, let's get him into that mode where he plays subpar chess and not the 2800 Ding that we've seen from the past.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think if you were going to tell me how, before we played, if you were going to tell me how Ding upsets Gukesh in this match, I think the match would kind of look like how we're going right now. Like Ding gets an early win, he's kind of just extending it out, and if you bring it down to let's say we're going into the last game and we're still tied, it's basically a coin flip at that point. And I think coming into it, Ding would for sure take a coin flip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I have been impressed that it seems like the further we're getting into the tournament, the more relaxed he seems. So I don't know, maybe he's using psychology to his advantage, where Gukesh now feels like, I got to press for a win. Like Ding isn't doing anything, and maybe he's going to pull a Magnus and overpress and then take a loss or something. Today could have been one of those games where Ding steals one in an endgame if Gukesh overpresses. So you just wonder if something like that's going to happen if Ding just plays really safely with white, tries to steal a game or two with black.
Yeah.
But all that said, I think it's still in Gukesh's court. I think in general, aggression is rewarded in chess. So the person who's going to be pushing for their advantage, it's just got to work out in the long run. So I agree with your take on that.
Yeah, but 3 whites left, as Magnus pointed out today for Gukesh. Time's running out.
So I've been looking at the odds recently, Ben, and I was wondering, what do you think the odds are of Gukesh winning the match at this point?
Yeah. So I mean, I looked at Polymarket before today, and I believe it was 72%. So now I would think it's a big hit. I mean, I would think 66. I haven't looked today, but
So I looked at Polymarket today, says 61% Gukesh.
wow.
And bet win, if I convert the odds and take off the house edge, it's about 68% for Gukesh.
Yeah, I would. I'm sorry. I would still take 61%. I would still, I'm a former professional gambler. I would still bet that. But again, I've been wrong so far. So
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like with how Ding has been playing, it seems like Ding has outplayed Gukesh this match. Like he's just played a little better. I may take the Ding side of the 61% even. It's close, but I still do think Gukesh is a favorite, but I may take the Ding
yeah,
side of that
it's
bet.
not unreasonable. Not by any means.
And if you look at some historic matches, when Karyakin, for example, played Carlsen and Caruana, there is this trend to play the match sort of like Ding Liren is playing it, just this ultra solid, safe setup. And one thing that we haven't talked about today, but Ben and I talked about previously, if we get to the playoffs, it's possible that Ding believes he's the favorite in rapid and blitz time controls. So that could be part of his strategy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think the playoff format definitely suits Ding's strengths because his strengths are like all calculation and seeing in depth. So that's going to be severely hindered if you get 15 minutes for all your moves, obviously. Do you have any other odds for us, Matt?
I have the game 8 odds. So looking at BetWin and Polymarket, they're very similar. It's about 19% chance for a Ding win, 12% for Gukesh, and about a 70% chance of a draw. What do you guys think?
I can't see Ding winning 1 in 5. I just can't see it.
Yeah. I mean, you would have to think draw might be a good bet, even at 70%. I mean, until we see Ding press with white, we kind of have to see it to believe it. I agree with what Jesse said about Ding. They both might be more likely to win when Gukesh is white.
And then BetWin also has odds on what are the results after the 14 classical games. And if you kind of do some back of the napkin math on those odds versus the overall winner, it seems like BetWin is saying Ding has a 55 to 60% chance to win the match if it goes to tie breaks.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
Very close.
yeah.
But yeah, as a chess fan, I think the close match is good. Either a close match or Ding running away with it would have been like the craziest results. But yeah, a close match makes each game that much more exciting. It's just sad that it's at 3 a.m. when we're all sleeping.
Yeah.
So Ben, do you wake up every day to watch the games live, or what's your routine, Ben?
No, I check it the moment I wake up in the morning, but I don't even set an alarm, but there's enough going on with my kids getting ready for school that I tend to wake up at 7:30, like basically no matter what here on the East Coast. And it's actually like if the game were starting an hour later, it would almost be the perfect time because the game, like today, it was almost like peak. It was half an hour later was like the first time control. It was like peak tension. So I don't mind missing the beginning at all, but there've been a couple games that I woke up and it was already drawn. Which is not ideal either. But, this is our future. India's taking over. Asia's taking over the chess world. So us Americans don't get to complain about the time of the match, unfortunately.
So, Ben, you are a GM in podcast hosting, but you're also a very strong chess player in your own right. So you're a national master. So when did you first kind of get into chess, and when did you first realize you were good at chess?
Well, I still haven't realized I'm good. I think a lot of chess players, like there's always so many people better than you. And I feel like I blunder all the time. So although when I was a kid, of course I had like the bravado of youth. So I guess maybe back then I thought I was good. But I learned chess when I was 6 from a family friend, and I actually loved it right away. I was but no one in my family played. I didn't really have any friends who played, didn't know about tournaments. So I didn't really pursue it seriously until I was 12, when there turned out to be a chess club at my school that was playing at during lunch hours. So I found out about it and started going, and that program was just starting, but it turned out to become kind of a chess powerhouse. It's called the Masterman School. It's like a public magnet school in Philadelphia. And as luck would have it, a couple years later, the Shahadis started going there.
Oh, nice.
And they had a really good teacher who built up a really strong program. So I was lucky in that I had a very vibrant chess community. And I was young enough. I mean, 12 is considered late these days to start tournament chess, but I was young enough where I played probably 2 tournaments a month. It was like my main activity from 12 to 18, but it's not, I didn't have to do anything that felt like work. I just did what I enjoyed and got better in those years.
Were you one of the top players in the country for your age then? Like in the
I was
later
always
middle
kind of
school?
like the second tier. Like they had these like top 50 lists. And I would generally be like, if for my specific age, I would be like 11th or something, and there was always 5 to 10 people, a couple hundred points higher than me. But in nationals, I would usually come in the top 25, and like there would usually be a round where I would play one of the big dogs and usually lose. So I was there, I was knocking on the door, but I never broke through really.
And how strong were the Shahadis back then?
Funny you should ask. So, I mean, of course, Greg is 1 year younger than me, and Jen is 3 years younger than me. So Greg, when they first started coming around, Greg went to this school is 5 to 12. So, and Greg came in 7th grade. So Jen wasn't even old enough to go there. So when Greg first came around, I mean, I was probably 1300, and there was a brief moment where I was better than him, and he was like 1100 ish, but he just exploded, and I would say within a year was better than me. But we were competitive probably, so that would have me be 12. We were competitive probably up until I was about 15 or something like that. And Greg then became in that first tier, winning nationals individually, and being like 150 to 200 points higher rated than me, which, considering that he was a year younger, was significant. But he was a great sparring partner. This was mostly pre-internet, although we both dabbled in the ICC as it was developing. So we would play like dozens of blitz games and, inadvertently workshop the specific opening lines that we played against each other. And their dad, Mike Shahadi, was a 2400 plus
Oh, wow.
FIDE master. So their house was hilarious. I mean, it was like enmeshed in games. Their mom was like an amazing bridge and Scrabble player. And their dad, and they played some poker. So there are like books about games everywhere, people playing games all the time, chess set right in the middle of the living room. And I spent a lot of time at their house. We also played our share of video games and stuff like that. But I mean, it was sort of an atmosphere where like they weren't hardcore studying, but like a game analysis could break out at any moment, sort of thing.
It's like the Polgar house.
Yeah. Yeah, much smaller scale. And it seems like the Polgars like really, I mean, Jen in subsequent years did work hard on her tactics. Greg, I think, had more of a sort of naturalistic, you could say, approach. So yeah, not nearly as regimented, but definitely like that culture was there for sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned that when you were like 12 to 18, it seemed like you weren't doing any work. You're just doing what you enjoyed. So what sorts of things did you go from, or would do from going from 1300 to like 2200 in that time frame?
I mean, it's the ChessGoals recipe. I mainly played a ton of tournaments, and we always went over our games. I did read chess books. I liked chess books, but I didn't consider them, and I studied openings on my own. But we're talking about a little bit. We're talking about a couple hours a week. It was more just like, I mean, we had after school club 2 or 3 days a week, and that was 2 or 3 hours. There was generally like a 45-minute lesson and then just playing with your friends. But that in itself was a method of improving. And then, like I said, probably 2 tournaments on average a month. So it, if you add up the hours, it would be very hard for an adult to do, but there was nothing that wasn't fun, I'm sure my parents chauffeuring me around would tell a different story, but you know, but for me it was fun.
Yeah, and speaking of chess books, you are now a chess book author, Perpetual Chess Improvement, Practical Chess Advice from World-Class Players and Dedicated Amateurs. If we could have a tally, yes, of all the time Matt has plugged your chess book, I think it's probably like half our episodes at this point.
Well, that's great to hear, because I have a lot of respect for the work you guys have done around chess, like researching chess improvement. So I'm glad that that you weren't throwing it in the trash.
This book sits on my desk all the time, Ben. I know Ben probably thinks Matt pulls this out whenever we're on a call together. This book sits on my desk.
Wow, I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah, and what I like about it, Ben, is if I were to create a book just based on stats, it would essentially be your book. And then you have all of the anecdotals where you say, go to this podcast episode, the strong player says to do this. Really, if someone wants just one book that can give them a framework on how to improve on chess, I feel like this is the book to get.
That's great to hear. That was the goal. So yeah, that means a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so I have to ask you, Ben, if you took someone who's kind of like a average ChessGoal audience member, so let's say 1,400 to 1,600 as an adult, pretty busy schedule. Maybe they have somewhere between 30 to 60 minutes a day on average to work on chess. Maybe an OTB tournament every couple months, mostly play online. How would you kind of craft their study plan? Like, what would you recommend for them to do each week to try to improve at chess but still enjoy the game?
Yeah, well, as I say in the game, in the book, I'm a big proponent of serious games, and I know, and I personally struggle with the fact that that's like the highest bar to clear. That's the hardest thing to do. So the first thing I would say is, if at all possible, if you can find a way to play 4 games a month, whether it be one monthly quad, or I've more recently finally found a club near me where I could play on a weeknight. Like, when you can find those where you play one weeknight a week, it's usually not too invasive on your schedule. But to have that as sort of like a signpost, like a lighthouse to guide you, I think is like the ideal, because like if you know who you're playing, or you even know what color you are, it's sort of like a prod to work on your openings a little bit. And then, as your research has shown, and as I anecdotally have come to a similar conclusion, just being faced with like all the decision choices from all the different phases of the game, and that feeling of like really caring, I think is, some people are more self-motivated than others, and some people have more success finding a way to study without those circumstances. But for me, that's the thing that clearly works the best. You can look for substitutes, whether it be like having a study buddy, or like, entering a group to try to up your puzzle rating or whatever it may be. But certainly I think like half of your time should be centered around like playing serious games and reviewing them.
I really like that point. Yeah, thinking about it from the motivation angle first. What will motivate me to study chess the most? Whether it's the over the board event, the study buddy, like you had Greg for a long time.
Yeah,
it feels natural. Like, hey, Greg and I are just getting together and playing chess. We're not even thinking that we're studying.
And that's kind of like how you made your push to National Master, Matt, as you were hanging out with your coach. Was it Scott? And he would just, and he would just come over, and you guys would just like play chess and like hammer openings for like hours. It didn't even like seem like you were studying based on how you would describe it to me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we were just study partners. He had a provisional USCF rating of like 2198 or something insane. I don't even know how he got that high provisionally. It's just
provisional master.
Usually that only happens for like people coming from Russia, from
right. But he's just super smart guy, and we would study chess all the time. So that was kind of my motivation to keep pushing, knowing that we were working together.
Yeah, it helps a lot. And maybe for some people, even something like Titled Tuesday, or like, non-Titled Tuesday, like even it can be faster chess, again, as your research has indicated. But the important thing is for it to be something that like you're fired up for, and you're sort of gearing your week or your month around. A month is like playing once a month is great, like in a quad again or whatever it may be. But there really is some sort of muscle memory and like developing a form that I think that if you're able to play one game a week, at least for me personally, I find like then you don't have to knock off all this rust, all the time. It's I think that's really the ideal both from a scheduling and from a performance perspective.
Is that kind of your feeling too, Jesse, as a busy dad? I know you like the Tuesday night tournaments that our club has sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and say that that's basically the only way I can play over the board chess at this point, because I think we both played in the Sleep Deprived Bullet Chess Championship, and so we have kids and a family, and like you just can't take Saturday and half of Sunday to go play chess for 12 hours. Like,
Yeah.
it just can't happen. But yeah, Tuesday, after bedtime or whatever, you go hang out and play a game of chess. That's totally doable once a week, or even like as your weekly thing. And it is really helpful to know that I have the white pieces this week, so I only need to study my white repertoire.
Right.
Or like a lot of the times your opponent in the club, so you're like, okay, well they play e4, so I only need to go through the Caro, or like you don't have to spend 8 hours reviewing your openings, and it's just like doing tactics after that. So yeah, we are blessed to live in, at least by Rochester, where we have a pretty healthy club with these quad slows, where we do one game a week for like 4 or 5 weeks, which I skipped out on this week because the first night was tonight and I had to be here for the podcast.
I'm sorry.
No, I probably wasn't going to play anyway. But yes, completely agree with playing slow games. And yes, our research has showed playing Blitz can help a lot too. I get into the bad habit of playing Blitz without even caring or thinking about it, and I'll just like punt 100 points. I'm like, okay, well, this is not helping my chess at all.
Yeah.
But if I like sit and focus and play, then I feel like I'm actually like dusting off some rust or whatever. So it does help.
I
Yeah.
can tell when you're focused, Jesse, because you start sending me all your games. here's my masterpiece. Check this out, Matt. Okay, Ben, so I want to know, at what age did you feel like maybe your motivation to play chess started to decrease a little bit? And is that when you started getting more into playing poker?
Yeah, it was definitely around that time. I mean, I think this happens to so many people. But when I went to college, I went to a school that was outside of LA called Pomona College. It's like a small liberal arts school, but you need a car to go anywhere. I mean, so I discovered pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be playing basically any tournaments. I mean, it turned out I made friends with another tournament player, and we would play a couple times a year. But between the social and the academic requirements, I mean, the social parts aren't requirements, but between like everything going on in college, it just fell to the back burner extremely quickly. And I would play, like living in Philly and being able to play in the World Open when I came home, and stuff like that for the summers. Like I would try to get back into it. But that was really, I mean, my rating peaked when I was 18. And even ending up working in chess off and on as an adult, it's only in the last handful of years that I've really consistently developed a chess regimen. I would still play in my 20s and 30s, but it would be like friends playing in the amateur tournament, or like on a whim. When I lived in New York, the Marshall's always there. So I might play 2 tournaments a year and never study, I had a lot of chess player friends, so some nights we might end up like playing Blitz just for fun. But it just, like any sort of serious tournament regimen, was not really a part of my life from the time I was like 22 to almost 40. So,
do you want to talk poker, Jesse? I could tell you're thinking about it.
Yes, so you mentioned that you played a bunch of poker. What was your game of choice? Or you Hold'em?
Yeah, so I that was also very chess related, my getting into poker. So my good friend Dan from college, we kind of accidentally saw this movie Rounders when it came out in college, and I was the perfect age to see a movie like that, and we didn't know the poker world existed, and we're like, wait, there's a game where you can make money, and I ordered my first poker book like the next day, and we would. This was like the Stone Ages. There was like internet poker was just in its nascent, extremely untrustworthy stages.
Was the book Super System? I have to ask.
No, it was called. Oh, I do have that. Have read it, but that wasn't. I don't know how that wasn't the one that I was recommended or came across, but it was called "Winning Low Limit Hold'em" by Lee Jones, who I met many years later, and that gets to your next question. Yeah, I was predominantly a Hold'em player. This was so long ago that a game called Limit Hold'em was at the time equally popular. It's fixed betting, so they always say in No Limit Hold'em you have moments of hours of boredom and moments of terror.
Sheer terror, yeah.
Yeah, but Limit Hold'em's not like that. Like other poker players used to joke and call it like poo flinging, because like it's just it's like you're all throwing small pebbles at each other, sort of constantly. But I eventually got into tournament poker, and that's actually where I probably had I did pretty well in limit games online, but I had some big scores in live tournaments, and especially like at the time I was really I was quite good at reading people and kind of like ahead of the curve as a player in the 2002 to 2010 period. And I felt like my chess background really helped my poker tournament skills in particular. But eventually things got harder and I kind of burnt out.
It sounds like you started at a good time for like a positive EV in your games too, because this was right before the big poker boom.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely right place, right time. And so many chess players at that time, like even ones who didn't end up like playing professionally and doing really well, like as side hustles, even though they didn't call them side hustles then. Like I had tons of chess player friends just saying, "Oh, I made $400 tonight, and I read 5 pages of a book." So it was it was a unique time for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, I played a lot of poker. I played mostly No Limit, and I came in after, like with the whole Chris Moneymaker rage.
Yeah.
I remember watching that on ESPN. They would play it like every hour because it was just exploding. But I got hooked for a while. Between my freshman and sophomore year of college, I just did that as my job. I just played No Limit. And I didn't really play that much, but my hourly, after I added it up, it was like $35 an hour at the end.
And there were so many stories like that then. Were you already a chess player?
Yeah, I had played like throughout high school, and I would play with my friends all the time. But I never was really all that good. Like I didn't play higher than like 50 cent a dollar, No Limit, Hold'em. But it paid for most of my college when you added it all up, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but were you already, had you played chess at that point too? Or
No.
Okay. I was just curious because I did feel like back then, if you were a chess player and you played poker, and back then it was mainly like just when things don't go your way, like, don't tilt off all your money. And other than that, if you like have a somewhat academic approach to how to play, that was all you needed. You didn't need to be a super genius. And I felt like 70-80% of good chess players like had such a leg up. But now the landscape is much more competitive. So now, like, even if you're a good chess player, and you read a book, you're not just going to crush. You're not just going to be able to pay for your college, playing poker the way things were back then.
Yeah, that ship has very much sailed, and the games now are so incredibly tough. There's like 10 people making money, it seems like.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like in the live casinos. I briefly got back into it when my family moved to New Jersey in 2018. We were closer to a casino, so there was a period where I unretired and tried to play a weekly game. But I found that it's a lot different psychologically with a family, and I just wasn't enjoying it that much. But I mean, this is all like 5-year-old data to begin with. But I did feel like it was beatable. You could still make a decent living. It's just by the time you're going to a casino, you have to table select and stuff like that. It's definitely not like the old days, even if you can still make a decent living if you do everything right.
Yeah, you can't just like sit down and play like 100 hands an hour,
right?
Just, like, eke out a small edge and get all like the rake back or whatever they called it. So you mentioned you read a lot of chess books going back to chess. Do you have like one or two that are iconic for you that helped you a lot, or?
The one that resonated the most with me when I read it was Seven Deadly Chess Sins, which I think is true for a fair number of people. So I wouldn't say so, but that book came out in like 2005-ish, I think. So maybe not. Maybe it came out a few years before then, actually. But in any event, it came out after the years I got better at chess, where I was improving the most. But just that whole psychological approach to decision making and giving all of these sort of common pitfalls names, that was definitely the book that I felt like I really felt seen and understood, and like I had like, you're not alone in whatever psychological struggles that you have. So that to me was a revolutionary book. In more recent years, I mean, obviously, as everyone cites, like Game Changer is just an amazing encapsulation of the rise of AlphaZero and like everything it's meant for the chess world. Obviously, like Ding and Gukesh, gave it a shout out the other day, and I love this book Under the Surface as well. But there's no book. I mean, I'm like my system generation. Like my system, even though these days I'm more critical of it than praiseworthy because there's so many better resources. But I did read it back in the day, and that was when I was getting a lot better at chess. But there's certainly no book as an adult, being that my rating has vacillated and I'm doing better lately. And certainly there's nuggets that I feel like have concretely helped my game from my interviews and from books and stuff. But there's no book that I can say that I read and I gained 200 points,
Right. Yeah. I don't think that's how it works at all in chess.
Yeah.
But I think like you put all these things together and like you just like very slowly get better. We had some calculations on like how much rating you can realistically gain every year. And once you're like an adult and over like 1700, it is so hard to gain rating realistically.
Yeah, it really is. And obviously the higher you go, the harder it gets.
Oh yeah. Do you have any favorite non-chess books that you want to shout out?
Let's see. I really like this book, Hitmakers by Derek Thompson. He's one of my favorite writers generally.
Okay.
He's like, he's got a bit of an economic training. He's a magazine writer for The Atlantic. But he wrote a book about like what makes things popular, what makes things go viral, basically. And just did a lot of, research into that. I mean, I really like narrative nonfiction. There's this guy, Robert Kurson, who wrote this book called Shadow Divers about these guys looking for treasure in the sea. And he's just like an amazing storyteller. And there's this sports writer that I actually interviewed for the Perpetual Chess Podcast because he's into sports, Joe Posnanski, who I'm a huge fan of his writing. Again, he just has this unique ability to encapsulate like what makes you feel something about like a particular moment. And he also has like an encyclopedic knowledge of several sports, but baseball in particular. And he's a great storyteller, so I read everything that he writes. Yeah, a lot of I try to read fiction, especially now because like I work in my house. I mean, I do have a family, but the women in my life particularly always say that like fiction's important for feeling empathy. And I do feel like I have a unique, like I have this sort of ridiculous life where I don't have to interact with the world. Like obviously I'm interviewing people about chess and putting it out into the world, but it's been a long time since I've like had to go to a job every day and like, since I've been dating and like stuff like that. So I'm trying to read more fiction as well. And I've read a couple of good fiction books as well recently.
Nice. Yeah, I am like a fiction addict. I'll read anything by like Harlan Coben, John Grisham. Those are my favorites.
Yeah, the mystery stuff just sucks you in. Yeah,
I know. I can't get rid of them. I got sucked into a series that has like 35 books, and I just finished I've just finished the 30th one. I'm like, it's not even that good. Like you just have to, commit to it. But yeah, it's always amazing with those nonfiction books. It's like if someone were to come tell you like you're going to be very interested in underwater treasure diving, you're like, what are you talking about?
Right, exactly.
But then like chapter one like sucks you right in. Malcolm Gladwell does that to me too. Like he'll tell a story about like 18th century art smuggling. It's like fascinating, but like I never knew I cared about this.
Yeah, and he in particular, I feel like he spawned a cottage industry Where now, like every time I read a nonfiction book, it's like I feel almost like I just feel like I'm being manipulated from the start, because it's going to be like story data, story data, big point, story data, big point. And it's like candy. I eat it up, but I also, it's like, I know you're doing this on purpose, which I guess is true with fiction as well. But like, I feel like it's more earned. If you could tell a good story that you created from your mind, like you deserve my attention,
Yeah. It's like the formula, but it still works.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ben. I think that is all the questions we had for you. We will shout out Ben's Twitter in the description. Of course, check out the
I actually,
Perpetual
I'm
Chess
kind of
Podcast.
done with Twitter. Very important that anyone watching this, you got to sign up for my stupid newsletter. Okay. It's free, Once a week, I'm toiling away for hours. I read every chess article I can find on the whole internet, and I put like the 10 or 15 best ones, and then I email them to people for free. I'm not entirely sure why I'm doing this, but as long as I'm doing it, all I want is more people to subscribe. And so if you see this, if you made it this far, your punishment is you have to search Ben Johnson Substack and sign up to get this email, 90% of Fridays.
Yeah, the link fests are great. I think you're up to like number 100 or something.
Yeah,
which is
amazing.
crazy.
Everyone could be the last, but
Yeah. Okay, well, for sure.
Especially if you don't sign up.
Okay. We'll for sure set up a link to that. Everyone, if you want Ben to continue doing the link fest, sign up in the description. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And here's to another 500 plus episodes of Perpetual Chess. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
man.
Enjoy the rest of the match. It's been fun.